Hey, what's up everyone? Adam here with brahwegotthis, and today we're going to talk about the new armor passives that are getting updated for ESO and update 29 on March 8th for PC. This is the next DLC update called Flames of Ambition, and man oh man, I've been looking at these and I'm wondering what the heck is going on right now. This has made, personally for me, making builds even harder now, which the more I dive into this system, the more I actually like it. I just feel like I was really getting in a groove with builds recently, and then they released this. But again, I'm not at all dissatisfied with the change, but I want to go into some detail to enlighten and to show you all kind of what you're going to be going into for update 29 and why the system is going to pose some very interesting questions and possibly produce some really interesting builds. Now, again, if you have any questions about any of this, you can always come by my Twitch chat at twitch.tv/brahwegotthis. Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. You can also join our Discord and ask any questions there. The links to those are in the description. You can also follow me on Twitter at brahwegotthis, and I want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons. Thank you everyone for supporting me. I do appreciate it. If you'd like to become a patron, check out the link below in the description to check out all the perks. And lastly, check out our website at brahwegotthis.com. So like I said, I was confused at first when I took a look at this new addition to the game, but if you aren't familiar with the newest news or updates, they have essentially tweaked some of the armor passives and added penalties and bonuses to wearing certain armor types, except medium armor, which we will get into a little later. They did this because they want you to have more of a realistic experience when wearing certain armor types. For instance, if you wear more heavy armor, then your movement speed while sprinting is going to be reduced per piece. Because if you think about it, if you are wearing heavier armor, you should move slower, unless you are an absolute unit. But that's not all they added or tweaked. So what I'm going to do is go through each line with you as it stands right now on the PTS. And then after that, I'm going to give my analysis of the system mixed with the new CP system. And again, this can change before release, so keep that in mind because this is the public test server. And if you haven't checked out my newest champion point guide, check it out in the description because you will need to make sure you understand the new system because it is changing completely. So make sure to check that out in the description. And before we get into this, if you'd like this content, make sure to like, subscribe, heavy attack that bell icon to stay up to date on all the content so you don't miss anything with Flames of Ambition, Gates of Oblivion, Blackwood, you name it. Make sure to do that, y'all. But let's go ahead and jump into the lines. So for the light armor, what we have right now are these penalties and bonuses. So for the penalties, each piece of light armor does the following: increases damage taken from martial attacks by 1%. So that's like melee, like poison, bleed, stuff like that. Increase the cost of block by 3%, and decrease the damage done with bash by 1%. So again, this is each piece of light armor, not just like if you wear one piece, this stacks up every piece that you wear. So interesting penalties because again, that makes sense if you have lighter armor. If you get hit with a melee attack, you're going to take more damage, right? But it increases the cost of block by 3% as well. Then the bonuses that you get. Each piece of light armor does the following: reduces damage taken from magical attacks by 1%, reduces the cost of roll dodge by 3%, increases movement speed while sneaking by 5%, and reduces the cost of break free by 5%, reduces the cost of bash by 3%. Now, so these are a little interesting. We will get into it when we get into the analysis. Then we've got Grace, which reduces the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 4% for each piece of light armor worn. We're at 28% right now. Reduces the cost of sprint by 3% for each piece of light armor worn. We're at 21%. We've got Evocation, increases the magic recovery by 4% for each piece of light armor equipped. We reduces the magicka cost of your abilities by 2% for each light armor equipped. Spell warding increases the spell resistance by 726 for each piece of light armor equipped. Increases the spell resistance rating by 219 for each piece of light armor equipped. And increases your spell penetration by 939 for each piece of light armor worn. Next, we're going to go into the medium armor. So the medium armor has no penalties. It just has bonuses. And I don't know exactly how I feel about this yet. I will get into that more in my analysis, but the bonuses are for each piece of medium armor. This is what it does: reduces the cost of sprint by 1%, reduces the cost of sneak by 5%, reduces the cost of block by 3%, reduces damage taken from area of effect attacks by 2% for 2 seconds after you use a roll dodge, increases movement speed by 2% while immune to crowd control. Dexterity increases your weapon critical by 219 for each piece of medium armor equipped. increases your stamina recovery by 4% for each medium armor equipped, reduces the stamina cost for your abilities by 2% per piece of medium armor equipped, reduces the cost of sneak by 7% for each piece of medium armor equipped, reduces the size of your detection area while sneaking by 5% for each piece of medium armor equipped, increases the weapon damage by 2% for each piece of medium armor worn, and increases the movement speed bonus of sprint by 3% for each piece of medium armor equipped, and reduces the cost of roll dodge by 4% for each piece of medium armor equipped. Now, for heavy armor, we've got the penalties. Each piece of heavy armor does the following: increases damage taken from magical attacks by 1%, makes sense. Reduces the movement speed bonus of sprint by 1%, makes sense. Increases the cost of roll dodge by 3%, makes sense. And increases the size of your detection area while sneaking by 10%. Bonuses now. Reduces damage taken from melee or martial attacks by 1%. Increases the amount of damage blocked by 1%. Increases damage done by with bash by 3%. And reduces your damage taken while immune to crowd control by 2%. Next, you have Resolve. Increases your physical and spell resistance by 343 for each piece of heavy armor equipped. Increase the health recovery by 4% for each piece of heavy armor equipped. You restore 108 magic and stamina when you take damage for each piece of heavy armor equipped. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds. Increase the max health by 2% for each piece of heavy armor equipped. Increases the magicka or stamina, your heavy attacks restore by 4% for each piece of heavy armor worn, and increases your healing received by 1% for each piece of heavy armor worn. So, you're probably wondering now, what the heck am I looking at, Adam? This seems a little different, and I'm not really sure what to think of this. Well, you're kind of in the same boat as me, but what I've tried to do is comprehend all of this and kind of do an analysis on it. So, one of the biggest things that sticks out to me first is obviously medium armor not having any penalties, okay? This is something that I don't really understand. I guess I kind of understand it, but I'm kind of wondering if they will add something to this or maybe reduce this armor line's like effectiveness at all, because I can't really speak for PvP. I know some people are really concerned about this for PvP, but for PvE, this still seems really good. And it almost makes me feel like, so at first glance, if you're a tank, I don't think you're going to be wearing any light armor, in my opinion, depending on the build. If you have some like interesting like non-meta build and stuff like that, that's perfectly fine, obviously. And there could be some builds that utilize light armor for sure. I could definitely see that. But right off the bat, what I'm noticing is like, if you're going to be a tank, I would see you using heavy armor and medium armor. If you're going to be a healer or DPS, I could see you using light and medium armor, but not heavy armor. And the reason being is it's almost like medium armor. There's no reason for you not to use this at all. Like, I almost think you should have at least 3 pieces of medium armor on at all times, depending on your build. The reason being is, again, you're going to reduce the cost of your sprint by 1%. You're going to reduce the cost of your block by 3% per piece. You're going to reduce the damage taken from area effect attacks by 2% for 2 seconds after you roll dodge, and increase movement speed by 2% while immune to crowd control. The other thing that you're going to get that's really nice, I think, for healers, DPSs, tanks, all of that, is athletics. Increases the movement speed bonus of sprint by 3% for each piece of medium armor, and reduces the cost of roll dodge by 4% for each piece of medium armor equipped. Now, I will talk about here in a second how CP is going to change some of this. But for me, at first glance, I see the medium armor line and I'm like, this line seems like it needs to be included in every build. It feels like you want to get a little bit of these bonuses. It might help. And if you don't have the CP, which we will talk about here in a second, I feel like you can get some of these bonuses and make up for that from the CP. Now, for tanks, it's really interesting because when you look at the heavy armor line, right, I understand the penalties. You take more damage from magical attacks. You reduce your movement speed, you increase the cost of roll dodge, and you increase the size of your detection area while sneaking by 10%. I don't really have any issues with this, right? But when you look at light armor, it's really interesting because the penalties that you get for wearing light armor almost make it seem like it's not even worth wearing it as a tank. The reason being is you're increasing the damage you're taking by martial attacks, you're increasing the cost of block by 3%, and you're decreasing the damage done by bash, which doesn't really matter too much. But I feel as if you don't really want to increase the cost of block because you're going to be blocking a lot as a tank. And you also don't want to increase the damage that you're going to be taking by martial attacks. Now, will this have a substantial effect? Will this be diminishing returns? Like, will the extra damage from the martial attacks really matter? Maybe not. This is something that I think we're going to have to test a lot more and see. But at first glance, this is something you have to keep in mind, and you have to at least consider it, because again, it's like, why do you want to take more damage as a tank? I mean, maybe your build wants to, and that's actually pretty cool. But this is kind of what I'm talking about, that we're going to see some very interesting combinations, I think, possibly, where we typically might not see, these type of tanks in the previous patch. And we might see some different DPSs that we may have never seen, or different healers. We might see more hybrid builds for sure. But that's something that I want to mention. Now, the bonuses, I like the bonuses. I mean, you reduce the damage taken by magical attacks. You reduce the cost of roll dodge by 3%. You increase the movement speed while sneaking by 5%. Doesn't really matter. Reduces the cost of break free. Reduces the cost of bash. Those are great for tanks. I mean, I like that for tanks, but will this light armor penalty be too much? And that's kind of where I want to talk about CP. And I'm going to get into more DPSs as well here in a second. I'm not done talking about the armor, but I want to get into the CP real quick, because, if you go to these passives, right, and you say, okay, increase the damage taken from martial attacks, increase the cost of block, can you offset that with CP? You should be able to. Right here, you can reduce the cost of block by 20 stamina per stage in the red tree. Okay, and then you see here in the blue tree, if you go to the sub-tree of Staving Death, you've got reduces the damage you take from martial attacks by 1% per stage, and you've got reduce the damage you take from magical attacks by 1% per stage. So as you can see in the CP lines, and like I said before, if you have not checked out my CP guide, make sure to check it out in the description, because it is important, because this is a whole new system, and CP is actually raised to 3,600 CP now. So you've got a lot more CP to grind. But as you can tell in the CP trees, you can cancel out some of these penalties, right? You can decrease your cost of block by 3% and the damage taken by martial attacks, and you could also offset some of the heavy armor penalties as well. But that's at the cost of your champion points. So this is kind of where I think ZOS is wanting you to decide and diversify your builds now, because the more CP you have, basically they said that, you don't need 3,600 CP to fully utilize, your damage and all that stuff, right? But the more CP you have now, the more flexibility you have for, really fine tuning your builds and really going a certain niche way, because it looks like to me that through CP, you can negate the light armor penalties. Okay. So then you still might be able to do 1 or 2 pieces of light armor, maybe 2 pieces of medium, or like 1 piece of medium or something for heavy. You like something that I was looking at first with my CP levels is maybe doing 4 heavy, 3 medium for a tank. But I could see people using the light armor and negating that with CP. But again, you're giving up your CP. And if you look at this, CP is different now, because again, you have to slot these different ones in these bars up here. You don't get them passively. Some of these you get passively, but some of these you have to slot. Okay, so like this one, you will get passively. But over here, you might not get some of these passively, and you have to slot them. So you're going to have to take away a few points from maybe something else that you want in this tree to get those negations, right? So you have to just think to yourself, is this going to be worth it to negate that by using extra CP? Again, we won't really know all of this for sure until there's more testing. And honestly, I think testing is going to take longer than usual. I just don't think this is going to be something that we're going to be able to perfect at the launch. I mean, I think it's something that we will have to really experiment with this year. And this is what leads me to optimism with this, because I do like the different choices you're going to have to make now. You don't just throw on a tank, 5 heavy, 1 light, 1 medium, on a stamina character. You're definitely going to do a lot of medium, right? But you could even throw in some light, you could even throw in some heavy. But let's talk about the DPS aspect real quick with this, because it's basically the mirror of the tank, right? Before you run 5 light, 1 heavy, 1 medium. Again, you're going to have to see if you run a heavy now, you're going to take more, damage from magical attacks. You're going to, increase the cost of roll dodge, which you do need as a DPS to get rid of or get away from some mechanics and everything like that. But again, is it going to be something that really matters? We really won't know. I also want to touch briefly on some of these other passives as well, because these are going to play a role, I think, when picking which armor line or armor you're going to wear. So for the light armor, one of the things that is appealing to tanks, at least, is reducing effectiveness of snares applied to you by 4% for each piece of light armor worn. That seems like something that tanks would utilize really well in even maybe stamina DPSs. So this, again, going to be very interesting, because this is something where you might want some of this on your tank depending on, what content that you're actually running. Another thing too is some increased magicka recovery. This is something that normally you want. You want some magicka and stamina recovery, mainly stamina, just because as a tank, you want to be able to get some of your resources back for magicka. But this is something that you can also look at that might be kind of interesting. Medium armor, we just more talked about. Windwalker, again, increases the stamina recovery by 4% per piece of medium armor equipped, which is nice. And then like the movement speed is something else that's nice for medium armor. Then we get to heavy armor, and you've got some other interesting ones here. You've got some resolve, which increases physical and spell resistance. That could be used for some mitigation. If you want to put some of your CP as a DPS into something else, you could put some mitigation right here if you wear heavy armor. And then you've got Constitution, which is also really interesting if it's for like a solo build. You get that health recovery, but that you restore 108 magic and stamina when you take damage for each piece of heavy armor equipped. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds. This is something that could be really nice for solo builds. And then you also have increased magicka and stamina of your heavy attacks restored by 4% for each piece of heavy armor worn for Revitalize. And this is something also that you might want as a DPS, because that's a lot of percentage if you put a lot of heavy armor on. So I don't know, y'all. It's going to be interesting to say the least, but I am really excited for this. This is something that I just wanted to touch on briefly. But that's something that you're really going to have to think of. And again, when it comes to the DPSs, you do really have to decide if you want to use a mix and match of armors. And this is something that, again, is going to lead to choice, and it's going to lead to what you like to run. And if you think it's got good results or how it's doing, you'll really be able to find out by just testing this out. So to bring all these thoughts together into an actual organized conclusion here, I want to highlight 4 main points. The first main point is being, again, we aren't really going to know fully yet until there's more testing, until there's more play through this and in-game content, if some of these penalties are going to really matter in builds, right? Same with like the bonuses and stuff, right? When you combine that with the CP system, we're really going to have to see how this plays out. I do think that it is going to matter. In my opinion, I think it will matter, and I think people can actually use it to their advantage, okay? And that leads me to the next point. This is going to bring a lot of diversity, okay? The reason it's going to bring diversity is I think people are going to try to push the limit of what they can do with these armor lines, okay? I think that they're going to try out new combinations. They're going to do some things you've never seen before. And that makes me really excited for this year in ESO, because I'm excited to actually make some really, really cool builds for you all. And I've got a few of them planned, actually. So this is going to be a journey for sure. And that then leads to the third point of more choice. This just gives you overall more choice. Like, you might be able to build a hybrid build. You might be able to run a full heavy armor DPS build. Who knows, right? I don't know that for sure yet, but it's just something that I really, really like about this system. And the last thing that I think is going to be actually pretty big, this actually may end up fixing the healer problem in ESO. Recently, and this last year, we've had a lot of people, a lot of people run content without a healer a lot of times. And a lot of people feel like the healer isn't necessary in a lot of content. And to be honest, like, if you've got the DPS, it might not be, right? And if you got the DPS and you do the content, kudos to you. But something that this might actually bring is this might actually bring more of a space for the healer to actually be needed, because you could make your build a total glass cannon build, right? And then you're definitely going to need some heals and stuff. You're going to have to watch out, right? You can make your build a really slow moving DPS build that just takes a lot of damage that is wearing a lot of heavy armor, right? So I see that this could create a space to make healers a little bit more viable than they were before. And that makes me excited, okay? I still think healers are important, obviously. But I just think that this could open that up, and that might fix a little bit of that naturally, and they might not have even intended that. Who knows? But I'm actually really, really excited for this. So let me know down in the comments below, y'all, what you think about some of these new armor updates coming with update 29. I'd love to hear y'all's opinions and feedback on this. And again, I will always be listening there. I'll try to respond if I can in the comments. But again, you can always come by my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/brahwegotthis, Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. You can also join our Discord. The links to Discord and Twitch are in the description. Make sure to also follow me on Twitter at brahwegotthis and go to our website at brahwegotthis.com. But until next time, y'all, you guys have faith, be great, and I'll see you on ESO.